Abduction, Chapter 2, Part 1. Any city that is covered in snow looks beautiful. If there were any imperfections in Lutsk, they were buried in about a foot of snow. The lights of the town reflected against the snow, giving it an air of charm to the nearest buildings. There were no tall skyscrapers to lord over you as you enter the city limits. There were only short, squat buildings that meant you no harm as you drove past them. I can only imagine the scene I was witnessing as I went through the outskirts of the city was what countless people have seen for generations, eating before the Soviet times. What I knew about the city of Lutsk was minimal, and this I learned from a quick internet search before leaving Kiev. The town was not huge by any standard, but it has over 200,000 residents that live within the city limits. For me, it makes Lutsk an enchanting village and one worth exploring. While Echo and I were in the city for 2 weeks, I had my hopes that this would hold because the rich history of this place was fascinating. I am sure Echo would prefer exploring markets and restaurants, but for me, many historic places held my interest. I drove through the town along snow-covered streets. A light dusting of white powder on the road quickly blew away the moment it was driven upon. The sidewalks were all wider than what we see in America. In front of some shops, the light snow had been swept away by shop owners. People walked along the walkways, paying little attention to the snow that had gathered in their way. The few people that were about looked to be busy attempting to get where they were going. They hardly noticed anything along the streets, unless they had to dodge others as their paths would collide if they did not move. Echo was quiet and appeared to be lost in her own thoughts, or absorbing the sights of the city like I was doing. She had been to Ukraine plenty of times during her years working in Belarus. Kiev and Odessa were 2 destinations she mentioned. If she had been to Lutsk before, she had not mentioned it to me. I could only imagine that Echo's fixation was still on the lights we had seen coming into the city. I had to admit that they were interesting. The clouds obscured the strange phenomenon, but they flashed on and off rapidly many times that it made me think it was a winter thunderstorm. Although rare, lightning could possibly form in a snowstorm. However, I am not a meteorologist, so I do not know how it technically works up in the clouds. I got the impression that the lights we saw in the sky were just that, a lightning storm, thereby debunking Echo's suggestion that the flashes of light we were seeing might be a UFO sighting. Before long, I was driving into a more residential area. The buildings were older apartments that had the appearance of a Soviet area of the 60s and 70s. For their part, they were still in good shape, from what I could tell in the dim light of the street lamps. The lighting softened the building's features, giving them a warm, nostalgic feeling that struck a chord in me. A few more modern apartment buildings appeared along the street as I drove. They spoiled the romantic sense I was getting from looking upon the scene. It seemed that the more I spent in the Slavic countries, the more I enjoyed them. I should not have been surprised that Echo had been in this part of the world for as much time as she did. She loved it too. "That apartment there," spoke Echo, as the slender index finger of her right hand pointed to one of the buildings in the distance. She was excited to see her friend's apartment. In the dimly lit streets, it was difficult to tell the structure apart from the others. The only landmark that distinguished this building from its counterparts was that it was slightly better lit around the perimeter. The closer I drove to the building, however, I found I was wrong in my assessment. The front facade was newer. The engineers who drew up this habitat's plans for humans must have wanted to have the same Soviet-looking architecture. I suppose I should not be judgmental about the place we would be spending the next few weeks. After all, we would be staying rent-free.